Chapter 5 Confession Runner 2 The day had only begun, and Christian was already in mortal peril, but now he had a goal. No one around questioned the scene that had just occurred before them. Instead, couples excited for the Halloween dance tomorrow were chatting and kissing. Christian saw multiple pairs of boys making horrendous displays of their body in the main hall, and he saw two girls walk by holding hands. He couldn't believe the priorities of the people of the school. They didn't understand what they were doing. Christian walked over to Austin and knelt over his corpse. He whispered a quick prayer. "I promise, no more will have to suffer the fates you have," Christian said. Then Austin's girlfriend came, sobbing over to Christian. He hovered his arms over her shoulders. "Don't worry, he's in a better place now," Christian said. "What?" she cried. "I'm sorry your boyfriend was killed, but—" The girl cut him off. "I don't care about that!" She put her head in her hands. "I can't believe I was dating someone who would run in the halls." The girl's breathing was erratic. Christian didn't know what to say. The girl slowly lifted her head from her hands. Her eyes were wide, and claw marks striped down from her bleeding eyes to her mouth. Her nails were bloody. "This is what I get for dating men," she said. Christian stepped back. "Wait, you weren't—" "Yes," she said, taking a step forward. Her head cocked up to the side. A drop of blood dripped onto her shirt. "I used to date girls, but I thought I would try something different for this dance." "You," Christian stuttered, "you corrupted him. You corrupted him, then. You're the reason he was perverted and obsessed over sex." The girl smiled. "Yes, but girls do it better." "No, you can't go back," Christian said. "There's still time to ask God for forgiveness." The girl stepped forward again. Her grin was wide and unyielding. "Why, yes, I suppose I could try a boy again." Christian continued backing away from her until his back hit the nearby wall. The brick pressed into his spine, and it only pressed into him hard as he continued to recoil from the girl's further steps towards him. "You should," Christian said, "and then wait until marriage to have sex again, and only have it for children as you should. You don't need a corrupt Mormon." The girl pressed her hand to the wall just over Christian's shoulder. She leaned into the boy. "Yes, I could try men again," she said. She leaned in and licked Christian's ear. "You're pretty cute." Christian was trapped. He felt the girl's shadow choking him, and he feared for his virginity. He recited verses in his mind to push Satan's influence away, to stop him from doing something he would regret. The girl bellowed. She pulled back and crossed her arms over her stomach. "You should have seen the look on your face. You really thought I would have dated a pure boy like you? Austin was just on a whim. I already have my eye on another girl anyway." The girl walked away. She stopped before turning the corner to go down the 1600s hall and glared back at Christian. "But if you ever want to change that holier-than-thou attitude of yours—" She lifted up her skirt and blew Christian a kiss before walking away. Christian's heart nearly beat out of his chest. He remained motionless for 5 minutes after she left. Once he felt safe, he sank down the wall and then sat on the floor, dazed for a moment. Ba-dump, ba-dump, ba-dump. His heart echoed into his ears. All the sounds of the people around him flooded away. He felt dizzy. His eyes felt blurred. Ring! He slept back to reality. He had 5 minutes to get to a class. Christian swallowed away the lump in his throat and got to his shaking feet. He had to get to class, and he had a mission to fulfill. In Christian's class, Christian began formulating his plan to show everyone the truth about what has been going on in the school during the dance tomorrow. He pulled out his pocket Bible while the teacher lectured and began searching for verses and writing down statistics about the harmful effects of homosexuality he could use in his debate. He drew a line down the middle of the page and then bisected it with another line at the top. In the left column, he wrote parents, and in the right columns, he wrote children. He bisected 2 columns again in the center of the page, creating 2 rows. The first he labeled homosexual, and the second he labeled traditional. Under the parent column and in the traditional row, he wrote 2. And then he stared at the parent column and homosexual row for a few minutes before again writing 2. This is going to be harder than I thought, Christian thought to himself. After he finished writing down notes, he realized he had missed the entire lesson, and the bell rang. Christian gathered his resources and headed for the door, but before he could make it out of the room, Tyler stopped him. "Hey, Christian," he said. He had trouble maintaining eye contact and fidgeted in his place. Christian hurriedly looked around for any other of the members of the anime club, and when he confirmed the coast was clear, he asked, "What is it, Tyler?" "I had something I wanted to ask you," he trailed off. "Yes? Well, Tyler tensed up. "Could you meet me in the cafeteria after school today?" "Sure, what's up?" But before Christian could finish the question, Tyler speed walked out of the room. His face was red. Christian was worried about his friend. What was on his face? Anguish? Despair? Fear? What had the anime club members done to him? Once the day had ended, Christian had remained vigilant as he crossed through the halls of the school. Every figure around him was a potential enemy. They were all clouded by the lies of the school administration, and they were all cultivated like sheep for the perverted whims of the anime club. He felt sorry for them. He had to help them. He knew the young Republicans weren't as indoctrinated as the rest of the school. They sympathized too much with the extremists, but they always ultimately listened to Jesus in their heart. He would get them on board with his plan at the club meeting tonight, and they would fix everyone. But first, he needed to see what happened to Tyler. Christian made it to the cafeteria in exactly 2:16 p.m. and 28 seconds. The school bell rang 2 minutes earlier today as a show of good grace by the principal before the big Halloween dance day. If it were a Friday, they may have gotten off 3 minutes early, but that was tomorrow. Christian kept nervous attention to his watch. For as long as he was within the school's boundaries, spatial and temporal, he was under the threat of magical boys. "Christian, you made it!" Tyler's voice erupted from the departing crowd of students. He skipped over to where Christian was standing on the other side of the glass wall separating the cafeteria from the main hall of the building. Here, they could be more alone. "I'm so glad you actually came." "Of course, I'd do anything for my bro," Christian said. "Now, what's going on?" Christian was still concerned. Tyler seemed back to normal, but once he asked the question, Tyler's face went red again. He fidgeted and looked sickly as if he wanted to share. What he had to share was so terrible, but it hurt him just to think about it. "Tyler, it's okay, you can tell me anything." Christian's eyes were warm. Tyler looked at him, and his nerves melted away. He finally had the courage to confess what was troubling him. "Christian," Tyler mumbled, "I like you." "Huh? Will you go to the Halloween dance with me?" Tyler stepped in close, and he clasped his hands together and held them close to his chest. "As," Christian stuttered, "of course I'd go as your friend." Tyler stepped closer. "As more than friends." Christian stumbled backwards. "No, He didn't hate Tyler, so he couldn't tell him how he truly felt. Instead, he chanted, "I don't hate you, but I don't approve of your lifestyle. I don't hate you, but I don't approve of..." But then Christian realized his words didn't mean anything to him. These past few days, Satan had been testing him, and this was his final barrage. Wrath was a sin, but so was lying. He couldn't let this go on any longer. "Tyler, if you're gay, then we can't even be friends anymore," Christian said. Tyler finally stopped stepping forward. His face lost all color. 2:17. "I'm not gay, and I won't let you make me gay," Christian continued. "I thought we were like brothers, but you've disappointed me, choosing this path." Tyler looked down on the floor. "So, that's how you feel." And then a flash of crimson light erupted from the African American. It was so blinding, Christian couldn't help but to think he had imagined it, and a blood vein had popped in his eye from stress, except that was when it dissipated, Tyler, and completely transformed. Instead of sporting his headphones, basketball shorts, and Ahegao hoodie, Now he wore almost nothing but a pair of red boxers and a black shirt draped over him like a cape. Fancy getup you got there, Christian commented. Yeah, Tyler said. They let me in. Let you in what? Tyler stepped forward. He cocked his head to one side and glared down at Christian. They let me in. He enunciated every word. Christian continued to back away until he was cornered against the glass wall. He remembered Austin's ex-girlfriend preparing to assault him, and he feared even more what Tyler could do to him now that he had chosen to become a homosexual. You're sweating? No, that's... Christian gulped. That came from the ceiling. You were born on Halloween. Yeah, so... Tyler slammed both of his hands into the glass wall on either side of Christian's body, blocking him in. Christian was eye level with Tyler's chest and completely trapped by the perverted boy. So, we're missing cancer. That could have been you. Tyler leaned in and breathed on Christian's ear. It still could be. Christian ducked out from under Tyler's cage and ran. He ran. Oh, running the halls, I see. Tyler grinned. 2:17 and 10 seconds. The lights went out. There were no club meetings today, so the school shut off power. Christian was almost blind except a red bolt of light streamed past him and crashed into the end of the hallway just as he was about to turn around. He turned on his heel and dashed the other way. I don't want to have to do this, Tyler echoed down behind him. Christian ran blindly through the dark. There was one safe place in a school a gay could never enter. He knew the path by memory. He could run the way blind, and he was. Shing! An arrow grazed his collar, striking a nearby door. Christian's heart stopped. He tried to turn around while running, but he couldn't see Tyler. All he saw was a burning red light at the end of a dark tunnel, waiting for him, beckoning him down to hell. He emptied his pockets of pencils and pens, hurling them behind him, but they only disappeared uselessly into the crimson void. Tyler cackled behind him, his voice echoing off the cold brick walls. Christian wasn't sure if the abominable noise was laughter or painful wailing, but he was sure he didn't want to find out. He looked forward again as if his feet propelled him. Christian shot up at the stairwell, his heart pounding so loudly he couldn't hear his footsteps. His heart told him to keep straight and flee the school entirely, but he knew in his mind that meant instant death. Not only would running to an open space only invite death for the archer powers of his once great friend, but once he became a hottie, he couldn't change exhalation without grievous consequences to his physical form. So instead, with shaking limbs, he turned down a stairwell. Safety was only 2 doors down. 2:17 and 17 seconds. 1 door down. 2:17 and 18 seconds. 0 doors. Christian reached for the club room door. One last arrow shot through the air. It pierced his hand. Christian screamed. He clenched his bleeding fist onto the doorknob and pulled it shut behind him. He ignored the flashing pain through him and shoved a chair under the door before scrambling over to the teacher's desk and hiding under it. The arrow dissipated, leaving behind a thin, bleeding hole. Christian winced. He tore the sleeve from his shirt of mixed fabrics and tied it around his hand. He prayed to God for his strength as quietly as he could. Step, step, step. Christian! Tyler moaned outside the door. Oh, Christian! He slammed against the door. It didn't budge. Christian could hear receding steps. There was a moment of silence, and he wondered if he was safe. 2:17 and 20 seconds. Slam! It did budge. Then the doorknob turned, slowly back and forth. The door was open, and Tyler crept into the empty room. The desks were lined in rows, obscuring his view of the full room. Oh, Christian! Tyler cooed. Tyler had underestimated the gay's intelligence. He covered his ears and pressed his back against the teacher's desk. Then a second set of footsteps appeared. He could tell by the pattern that it came from a gay, stepping in an effeminate way. He was trapped, and now outnumbered. The boy cackled. From the cheery attitude, Christian deduced it was the upbeat boy he had sat near during the first meeting, Ryan. He knew Tyler's power didn't work up close, but Ryan's power was unknown to him. He had to avoid confrontation at all costs. He asked God for guidance. "Follow me," he heard in his heart. Christian's eyes shot open, and he glanced behind him only a moment to see Ryan and Tyler approaching down the first row of desks. They were heading to the teachers' desks in the corner of the room. Christian followed God's guidance, pulling him to the right, and crawled to the back end of the second row of desks, and then turned down the row, keeping under the height of the desks and out of sight. Tyler turned down the second row, and Christian could hear his hot and bothered breathing just across from him. He clasped a hand over his mouth and pressed his back against the desk. Tyler's feet could be made out from under the desk as he passed. He stopped. He tapped his bare toe against the ground. He turned and looked over the row of desks. He inhaled, searching for Christian's scent. His head hung directly over the desk Christian hid under, but Chris remained just out of sight. Fortunately, Christian didn't wear perfume as gays use as their dog whistle, so Tyler couldn't locate him and turned away, continuing back down the row. The two continued creeping in opposite directions, but then Tyler frustratedly kicks the desk beside him, causing all the school supplies to fly off the surface and onto Christian. Startled, he gasps and dashed in a crawling posture down the end of the row. Tyler's head creaked as it began to turn. The door was close, but if he ran for it, Tyler would see him. Instead, he turned to the third row and slammed his back into the end of the row to hide from sight. A pen almost slipped off as he did so, but Christian caught it. He was almost gasping from fear, but he clenched his teeth and closed his lungs. Tyler threw his head under the desk beside him and scanned the second row. Empty. Clang! Christian's eyes went wide. His neck trembled. He dropped the pen. It fell to the ground and rolled out into the open. Both Tyler and Ryan heard it. Christian crawled down the third row, back towards the hall across from the door, and Ryan and Tyler headed in his direction to the side of the room with the door. Ryan leapt onto the top of the desks and growled like a lion. Christian tried to stay out of sight, but then he glanced back and realized that was his pen. That was his desk. From his position, he couldn't escape, but with what was in his desk, he could fight back. Christian clutched the holy water, which he kept close to him at all times, and crawled back to the desk. Ryan and Tyler marched slowly, continuing to glance around them. On their way to the desk, Christian quickly made it back and rummaged through his desk. Found it! He only had enough holy water for one magical boy, but this new weapon he could defeat an infinite number of sinners. Tyler knelt over when he made it to the end of the row and sniffed at the pen, his head just inches away from turning to see Christian. Christian pulled out his straight pride flag from his death, the symbol of his oppression, and used it to defend himself. He quickly strew it across the row, obscuring him from view as he crawled back down the row. Instead of turning towards the teacher's desk again, he turned right and jumped into the cabinet at the back of the classroom. Tyler ripped through the straight pride flag, but Christian was already out of sight. He clambered down the row after him, with Ryan right behind. 2:17 in 30 seconds. Christian just needed to distract him for a little longer. He pulled his holy water from his shirt pocket and mumbled a quick apology before hurling it towards the front of the room. It made a sound like a quick scrambling of footsteps. Two magical boys turned their attention to the front of the room. Then Ryan's eyes turned to the TV in the front of the room, where Christian's reflection appeared. Christian turned the stupidity of sinners into his own quick thinking. He screamed, and Ryan leapt at the TV, crashing his face through it. The boy was out cold. There was only one left. Christian was confident he could outrun Tyler. He jumped out of the cabinet and ran for the door. Tyler was straight on his heels. The boy waddled after him, as if his head tilted, as if his neck were snapped, and it was about to fall off. There was a large bulge in his shorts, and Christian feared for the safety of his body. 2:17 and 35 seconds. Tyler gained on him. Christian made it to the door. He slammed it behind him. Tyler broke through. 2:17 and 40 seconds. There wasn't enough time. Tyler was only inches behind him. Christian had to use it. He stopped and turned around, revealing the weapon he had retrieved. He held his arms outstretched, bearing a shiny silver cross. Ew, Tyler hissed, stopping in his tracks. Gross, bro. Tyler panted. Christian panted. Tyler turned around and walked calmly away. Ring! 2:18. Christian was safe. For now.